volunteer moderator here with the Philanthropy Club of Illinois. I dropped my email address in the chat. If you see and or hear something today that you would like to learn more of, please do not hesitate to reach out. Please also introduce yourselves and your organization inside of our chat. If your organization has any career opportunities or upcoming events, please feel free to share them. So just a quick background, the Philanthropy Club of Illinois was founded over 20 years ago by Gus Wilhelmy, the co-founder of Safer Foundation. The club is 100% volunteer driven, and our singular goal is to level the playing field for all Illinois nonprofits when it comes to accessing funding to support the missions of the organization and communities that they serve. We fulfill our goal by providing no-cost monthly programming to support nonprofits with access to funders and by offering technical skill building for effective fundraising. Today's panel is titled Diversify Your Fundraising with Giving Circles, and I would like to turn it over to my amazing panelists to introduce themselves. Carrie, can you kick us off first, then Vanessa, then Corliss?
Sure, yes. Hi, thank you so much, Alexandria, and thank you so much for having me be a part of this. Nice to be here this morning. My name is Carrie Goodale. I work at the Chicago Community Trust as the Affinity Funds Coordinator. We're a team of two that work with 6 identity-based funds that function, in participatory grant-making models, giving circles, and affinity funds. We have African American Legacy, Asian Giving Circle, Disabilities Fund, LGBTQ Community Fund, Nuestro Futuro, and Young Leaders Fund. We'll kick it over to Vanessa.
Thanks, Carrie. Good morning, everyone. Vanessa Lee, she, her, hers. I am at Chicago Foundation for Women. I'm a program officer here, and my role is supporting all the giving circles and councils that CFW is a backbone for. We currently have 5 active, and they are both affinity and geographically based. So we have the South Side Giving Circle, the West Side Giving Circle, the Western Suburbs Giving Circle, Young Women's Giving Council, and LGBTQ Giving Council. I'll pass it over to Corliss.
Thank you, Vanessa and Carrie. Good morning, everyone. I am Corliss Garner. By day, I am the Chief Diversity Officer for Old National Bank. Also by day, I am involved in the Westside Giving Circle, work very closely with Vanessa. I'm a co-founder of the Westside Giving Circle, and I am also by day, a life director of the African American Legacy Fund at the Chicago Community Trust that Carrie and team supports. So definitely so happy to be here.
Thank you so much, ladies. So before we kick it off, I just want to remind everyone that the goal of today's panel is to educate, inform, and empower you on ways in which you can increase your philanthropic giving through various giving circles here with the Chicago Community Trust and Chicago Foundation for Women, whose initiatives are all aligned with creating equitable and sustainable communities, Chicagoland communities for all people. So I am going to start our PowerPoint. Carrie, can you kick us off with the giving circles with the Chicago Community Trust?
Sure, absolutely. Like I said, we do have 6 affinity funds, and they are all, a little different in scope, different in how long they've been around, what they do. But the main point of all is to function as a grant making entity for different communities led by community experts. Like I said, we have 6, African American Legacy, Asian Giving Circle, and Asian Giving Circle is our only one that still functions like a traditional giving circle. They do not have an endowment. The other funds all do at this point. And Asian Giving Circle is right now in the midst of their grant review process. They are dwindling down their large applicant pool to, they're going to fund this year, it'll be 10 organizations at 10,000 each. And I think this is one of their largest grant cycles ever. So that's really amazing. They are also working on defining what's next for them, if they do want to become an endowed fund and how they want to keep focus in the Asian American community in Chicago, and just what kind of strategies they're going to take to do that. I think we can go to the next slide, Alexandria. These are from last year, from 2023 grant recipients. Like I said, they're still in the process of doing the 2020 right now. And this year is $10,000, but in the past, it's been 8,000. They've really grown a lot, which is awesome. Our next fund is Disabilities Fund, which has been on a hiatus since COVID. And they began in 2002, and they were really more of an entity that did policy and advocacy work at the trust. And they were supported by what is now called Disability Lead. So when Disability Lead spun off into their own entity and then coupled with COVID, it kind of put Disabilities Fund without any staff support. So they are actually relaunching this month. We are having a big event later in August. We just solidified the new advisory board, so they will be more of a participatory grant making model too. So we're very excited to see where they're going to go here in the future. Our next fund is our LGBTQ Community Fund. It's the youngest fund. It was founded in 2010. They are also right now in the midst of their grant cycle, but their RFP is open. So if you have anybody you'd like to share that with, please do. This year's criteria, they do an annual grant making process, but their focus areas switch each year. This year is going to be for organizations with operating budgets under 2 million that work in the areas of art, seniors, and youth. So please share if the deadline is later this month. So there's still time for folks to get their applications in. Our next fund is Nuestro Futuro, which is our Latina Giving Fund. It had began as a giving circle and then kind of shifted into this endowment fund. They are the largest affinity fund for Latina giving in the country, which they're very proud of. Their endowment now is a little over 7 million. They are doing a landscape survey of the area of philanthropy for Latina giving alongside Greater Chicago. So that should be coming out soon. Keep an eye out for that. And these are their 2023 grant recipients here. They just wrapped up their 2024, so it hasn't been announced just yet. And then our other fund, not last, but just last alphabetically, is our Young Leaders Fund, which is how I know Alexandria here. Our Young Leaders Fund is actually our oldest affinity fund, though. They've been around since 1994. And they're a little unique in the model that the members themselves do a lot of the legwork. They find the agencies they do the research to find the agencies that are going to be a grant cycle, and then they work with them throughout the entire process. Their grants are traditionally a little bit smaller, around the $5,000 range, and they're always to small startup grassroots organizations that have never been funded by the trust before. So a lot of them go on to different entities of funding at the trust, whether with another affinity fund like AAL or the larger community impact side of our grant making as well. And then I think I pass it now to Vanessa, right?
Yes, you're right. Thank you so much, Carrie.
Awesome, thanks, Carrie. So I can speak to the 5 that are hosted by Chicago Foundation for Women. So CFW also has a history of hosting giving circles and councils of about 20 years. And over those 20 years has pushed out about 1.8 million in funding to over 160 organizations. We have a really diverse group of members. This past cycle, we just closed, we run on a fiscal year, so our cycle just closed June 30th and had 143 members. And really CFW views giving circles and councils as a way to build women's philanthropy, to foster community-led grant making, identify emerging needs, introduce CFW to newer organizations and community leaders that we wouldn't otherwise have met or known about, and really kind of increase access of smaller organizations to funding and leadership development opportunities. So the first one we have up here is the Western Suburbs Giving Circle. They were established in 2016. They focus on funding organizations in the western suburbs of Chicago. Their eligibility criteria, they focus on organizations with budgets of 3 million or less. Again, western suburbs, and all of the giving circles and councils at CFW run on the fiscal year, like I said. So most of them start their kind of nominations of organizations, opening the RFP, whatever, in winter, and then moving into spring, have their site visits and make decisions collectively about which organizations they're going to fund and in what amounts before June. And then end of June, those are announced and funding is pushed out. The next one we have is the Southside Giving Circle. This was founded in 2018. They focus on funding organizations led by women of color, primarily Black women, serving Black women and girls on the south and west sides, or sorry, on the south side and the south suburbs of Chicago. Their eligibility criteria, they focus on organizations with budgets under 500,000. So 3 of our 5 groups actually focus on organizations with budgets under 500,000, really because these grants aren't massive. All the grants are coming from member donations every single year. So only one of our groups has any sort of endowment, which we haven't even touched yet. So every single year, what is being pushed out in grant making is coming from member donations, which means grants are not on the same scale as what the trust is doing. But that's kind of why they focus on these smaller organizations. They want to see how can they make the most impact with the dollars that they do have and target organizations that really have the opportunity to scale and then draw the attention of larger funders. Our next one is LGBTQ Giving Council. So this is our oldest giving council. They were founded in 1998 and began grant making in 2004. One thing I'll note about our councils is that they have the lowest membership donation amount. The circles are higher. The LGBTQ and young women's minimum donation amount is $100 because they really want this to be accessible. They want people to have the opportunity to learn about the grant making process, about organizations that are out there and the sector, and they don't want someone to think they have to have tons of money in order to be a philanthropist. So for LGBTQ, they focus on grant making with organizations serving the LGBTQ community in the Chicago region, operating budget of less than 500,000. So their awards again tend to be smaller. And our last one is Young Women's Giving Council. So this has parallels definitely with the Trust Young Leaders Fund. It was founded in 2008. And this is focused on empowering young women, non-binary people to support young women and trans and non-binary people in the Chicagoland area. And it's really an opportunity for them for professional development as well, to connect with peers, to learn grant making, philanthropy, build their leadership. So their grants are smaller. They focus on organizations with operating budgets of 500,000 or less, and they fundraise actively, both LGBTQ and young women's, because their membership minimum is so much lower. They also fundraise throughout the year. And then I think I pass it to Alexandria.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much. So, as everybody knows, it is Black Philanthropy Month. So, we are dedicating a slide as we go into our African American and Black led giving circles. So, just a little bit of background on the origin of Black Philanthropy Month. It was created in August 2011 by Dr. Jackie Bouvier Copeland and the Pan African Women's Philanthropy Network. August just represents an annual month long of global celebration of African descent giving. It serves as an initiative to all African American communities and their allies to reflect on the power and just to promote giving that transforms lives. It also highlights the contributions of Black organizations while promoting increased financial support and sustainability for those initiatives. And just a little bit of background, it shows that African Americans donate a larger share of their income to charities than any other group of nation. Moreover, despite the racial wealth gap, African Americans give at higher rates, even though their family median household income is almost $20,000 less than any other family in America. And this is according to the Brookings Institution. I'm going to kick it over to Corliss. Thank you, Corliss.
Thank you. Good morning. So yeah, happy to talk a little bit about African American led and centered giving circles. The first of which is the African American Legacy at the Chicago Community Trust. This fund was founded in 2003 by several community leaders in the city who wanted to provide an opportunity to engage in collective philanthropy, where not only our traditional philanthropic bodies could get engaged in supporting community, but just really the everyday Chicagoan can access philanthropy, learn about philanthropy, and engage in collective impact. So in 2003, the fund was founded. I was involved with the fund since 2010. I served as chair of it for a number of years, and the fund has grown and expanded its reach by leaps and bounds over the time. If we can go to the next slide, please. The eligibility criteria for the fund is operating budgets between 50,000 and 2 million, Black serving and Chicagoland area. As Carrie mentioned, this is also an opportunity for organizations to gain access to funding from the Chicago Community Trust. So those organizations that may not have been able to qualify for funding from the trust, the giving circles are a great way to access that. Average grant size is between 10 and 20,000, and we're talking about smaller organizations. Those can be meaningful grants, and the nonprofits that have been awarded. Certainly 250 grant recipients and over $500,000, 500 organizations impacted, some of which you see here on the screen. So if you are seeking to not only access additional funding, but also think about your own personal philanthropy during Black Philanthropy Month, African American Legacy is a great option for you. Next slide, please. And then I also have the pleasure of being engaged in the West Side Giving Circle. Vanessa talked a lot about the other circles that are hosted by Chicago Foundation for Women. I am a West Sider. I'm born and raised here in Chicago, have always lived on the West Side, still live on the West Side. And selfishly, when I heard about the South Side Giving Circle, my question was, well, why don't we have this on the West Side? So pulled together a couple of folks and started to talk about how this could come to fruition. Naively, I thought it was as simple as saying, hey, pull your money together and let's go give money to organizations. But later learned there is huge infrastructure behind giving circles, lots of support, and we're really grateful for Vanessa and Chicago Foundation for Women to give us that infrastructure and support. We call ourselves a pandemic baby. We were born in 2020. And we really spent that time thinking about who did we want to serve, how did we want to serve them, and and what our mission and our impact will be. Certainly serving Black women and girls on the West Side of Chicago, organizations that are smaller in nature, more grassroots, and those that are fighting against the ills and the perils of our community. So we were really thoughtful about who we wanted to serve and how we wanted to serve them. We were also very thoughtful about the community of women that we wanted to bring together in the circle. This is not only an opportunity to engage in collective philanthropy, pooling your money to support organizations. It's also an opportunity to support each other. So all of those beautiful faces that you see on this screen here are leaders in our community who are really passionate about our communities, particularly on the West Side, but also passionate about serving and supporting one another. And that's what giving circles allow us to do. I can take you to the next slide. And just a little bit more about our circle. 3 years we've been giving out grants, about $85,000. Again, this is all money raised through folks who are engaged in the circle, typically supporting organizations with a budget of $1 million or less. So the smaller organizations, we give priority to organizations that are on the West Side of Chicago in Austin, East and West Garfield Park, and North Lawndale, and for organizations that are led by Black women. We also take into consideration board demographics, staff demographics, and we align with the guiding giving principles of CFW. Our grant sizes are between 5 and 15,000, and we typically give somewhere around $10,000. And the 4 organizations you see on the screen here are the ones that have been selected for our most recent grant cycle. So I'm super excited and proud of the work of both African American Legacy and Westside Giving Circle, and delighted to highlight them in Black Philanthropy Month. So thank you, Alexandria.
Thank you, Corliss. Oh, you guys ladies are so awesome. So if anyone is interested in learning more or joining a giving circle, we have dedicated a page towards Carrie's email and Christine. They both work together with the Affinity funds, and the website listed here as well. And then for Chicago Foundation for Women, Vanessa, we have you and her email as well as a link to view more of the giving circles. But I'm going to stop sharing now. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask any of our panelists regarding a giving circle or anything that we didn't cover that you would like to know more about? Okay, I think we are.
I have a, I want to say this is quick, but maybe it's not. I'm interested, Corliss sort of, I think it was Corliss alluded to, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into making a giving circle actually function. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about that, how, what the startup involved and sort of what's involved in keeping it going.
Yeah, I can jump in, and then probably we'll tap on Vanessa to help with some of this as well. I think initially it was really around deciding who do you want to fund, how do you want to fund, what would be your giving criteria. As a place-based fund like we are, uh, West Side of Chicago is a huge place, right? Like, how do you narrow that down, and how do you position yourselves to do this work in an effective and impactful, but also manageable way. And then thinking about who do you want to get involved in this work? Who are the folks who are interested in this and have the capacity, both time and treasure to engage. And then just the operational side of it, right? Like, how do you execute on a grant cycle? How do you access organizations? When funds come in, where do you actually put the funds? And that's where Chicago Foundation for Women became really important, an important partner for us. The thing that I did not share about our fund at the Giving Circle is we had started this work after I got jealous of the Southside Giving Circle, and then found that we needed that partner, right? And at the time, Chicago Foundation for Women was going through some transition, so it wasn't a great time. But we also had to figure out where we were going to get the money from. As great timing would have it, fast forward about 18 months later, we were Chicago Foundation for Women was approached by a philanthropy fund that was sunsetting, and they had a tranche of money that they were looking to place somewhere as they were sunsetting that fund. And they were a West Side focused organization. So they came to Chicago Foundation for Women. We had stayed in touch with Chicago Foundation for Women about our giving circle. So when those dollars came to them, they were like, we know exactly what to do with it. And they ended up reaching back out to us. And that's how we got started. Vanessa, is there anything that you'd like to add just generally about logistics?
I guess the only thing I'd add is that, like Carrie said, each of the giving circles and councils kind of has a slightly different process. For the West Side Giving Circle in particular, they use a member nominated process. So we really lean on the members who are community members who live in the community, know the community, have worked in the community, and can find these kind of grassroots organizations that CFW otherwise wouldn't know about. So members nominate organizations to be considered by the group collectively for funding. And then we go through the whole application process and site visit process.
Anyone have any more questions? I'm also, I put the links to view more about the affinity funds with CCT and the giving circles with Chicago Foundation for Women as well, for reference. Okay, make sure I didn't miss anything in the
I guess I could ask a question in terms of, so first of all, amazing work. I'm familiar with several of the circles, but it's so good to see the kind of a little bit more about the behind the scenes. And thank you for sharing also your experience in starting one. I guess I'd throw out there, because I work with different organizations. Do you all ever, or do any of these giving circles, are they all specifically for like nonprofits, or are there ever any social impact driven for-profits that you also support? Because I noticed that there are some organizations that are not, they may not be nonprofits, but they serve nonprofits and they direct their services towards social impact.
I can jump in. Our circle in particular only supports 501c3 organizations. And with our alignment with Chicago Foundation for Women, the same, and Carrie can confirm this for me, is for African American Legacy. But to your point, I think as a giving circle, one of the things that is so great about them is the flexibility. So if there is an organization or a lane that you'd like to support, I believe a circle can be built around that desire to support a social impact for-profit organization. Ours is just so happened to be structured to only support 501c3s, but I think the circles give you plenty of flexibility to support wherever you'd like.
I'll add one thing to what Corliss said. CFW only does funding, and all the giving circles and councils fall under that 501c3s, or if they have a fiscal sponsor that has a 501c3, that can happen with, really, really small organizations that might not have gone through the process to obtain their own 501c3 yet. I will also say that the Southside Giving Circle is the only one currently at CFW that also provides leadership awards. So they know the challenge of finding funding for professional development, particularly for women of color, Black women who lead organizations. The second they get funding, they put it towards the organization, not towards themselves. So they set aside a certain amount of money each year to specifically to fund leadership awards. And we have found that like 2 of the awardees this year are in corporate, but they found a fiscal sponsor to support their kind of extra work for the community that isn't through their for-profit company, and we're able to push the leadership award money through that fiscal sponsor. So that's kind of one way too.
Thank you, Vanessa and Corliss. Does anyone else have any questions? Anything they want to learn? Anything for Chicago Foundation, Chicago Community Trust? Any questions for Carrie, or are everybody okay?
I just want to say, like, if you do have a question later, feel free to email me. I won't speak for Vanessa and Corliss, but probably too, because I know sometimes I'll think of something later.
Well, I will throw one more out. If anyone can share any experience in terms of instituting a given circle within a current nonprofit. I mean, I guess these are like major foundations, and so I mean, obviously you just like maybe tell us a little bit about the structure. I mean, I know that it was shared that one of the women borrowed some insight on the structure from another organization, but maybe if we could learn a little bit about, or if you have any recommendations on how to institute it within a charitable nonprofit.
All of the giving circles and affinity funds at the trust predate me, before I was on board, but I know that they took a lot of advocacy internally with members and also members of the executive committee. A lot of folks kind of got a push from that with their giving circles. And now our disabilities fund, like I said, they've been established, but they are changing their model because they've been on hiatus for a while. I would like, so I can kind of speak to like how we're redoing that. And we've really worked with other outside agencies such as Access Living, Disability Lead, and then Chicagoland Disabled People of Color Coalition to work to find candidates to interview. We ended up interviewing like 35 people for 9 spots, which was amazing. So I can kind of speak in that way. We do a lot of partnership, and we'll now we'll be onboarding these new members and they will start. But yeah, it's definitely looks like it was a lot of internal, like if you had a connection at the trust or CFW, that's a good way. And then just come to, you could say, hey, I have this great idea, let's chat about it. And just a lot of advocacy and promotion on the circle's end.
I kind of heard that question, and if I'm not responding in the way that you wanted to learn about, I heard that question as kind of, could a nonprofit start a giving circle? I believe that has happened. Pretty much the concept of collective giving is that people come together, pool their money, and make those donations or grants with that money. So you don't even have to be hosted by an institution to have a giving circle. It could be a group of friends who get together, grab wine once a month, and commit to giving $100 each, and then they give all that money together they select a nonprofit together and give it at the end of the day. So there's a range in terms of how structured giving circles have to be. I think certain giving circles get hosted by institutions because there's some benefits in terms of kind of admin support on the back end. It just kind of lifts some of that burden, as well as then the donations are tax deductible. So there's kind of a financial benefit as well. Whereas if you could choose as a group of, people coming together, friends, to give your money to individuals, you could choose giving money to for-profits. There's nothing stopping you from doing that if you choose to set up your giving circle in that way. So it just kind of depends on how you want to structure it, who you want to fund, who's part of it, who are your members. And there are organizations out there that it feels like collective giving is really growing as a movement. And so there are a lot of resources out there, like Philanthropy Together is kind of one area or one entity that is starting to hold a lot of resources around starting giving circles. And there are others as well.
Thank you, Vanessa and Carrie. Did that answer your question a bit?
Yeah, that was helpful. Vanessa, if you could list the name of that organization in the chat, or if you could repeat it again. But yeah, that was helpful. I'm studying for my CFRE, and we're talking about the subject. So I think this is helpful. And also, if you want to share a little bit about just the giving circles versus the other methods. But I do know that other people have questions as well now. So
Thank you. Drew Williams, want to go for your question next?
Oh, please excuse me. Hello, everyone, and thank you for all of your insight share and your expertise in this area. I know remarkably little about giving circles, so this is really illuminating for me. Please pardon if this question is rudimentary. But just in terms of the design of giving circles themselves, how do they, maybe it's an anecdote or maybe it's by design, how do they deliberate to identify their effective marching orders, like the thing that they find to be the community problem they find to be salient, to then direct their giving toward? Like the amalgam is, right, if you think about CCT or you think about any grant-making organization, there's a strategic vision that they have, and then there are the portfolio of organizations that advance that singular or whatever size vision that they do have. So I guess my question would be, how do giving circles determine whatever their kind of priority giving strategy will be?
I can start. I can jump in. A great question, Drew. I think it's really whatever you want. I mean, that's the flexibility around it, right? Our circle with Westside Giving Circle, it just so happens to, you know, the focal point was the West Side of Chicago. And then we kind of mushroomed out to Black women and girls on the West Side of Chicago. And then when in our partnership with CFW came other parameters, right, that we added to the mix. But it really could be whatever you believe you are seeking to solve. There's a lot of need in the world, right? And I'll give you just another example, and I hadn't thought about it until now. Some years ago, I started throwing myself a birthday party. And what I told folks is instead of buying me a $5 card or a $20 bottle of wine, just give me the cash and I will match it and I will find somebody to give it to. And what I decided to do was support a young Black woman who was on her way to college. So over the years, I haven't done it since COVID. COVID kind of broke the streak, but I did this for 8 years. And the last funding that I had was about $3,000. And I found 4 young Black women who were on their way to college, and I split the money up among them. And you know, that supported them in whatever it is that they needed for school. That was a giving circle. And it was really centered around my birthday party and my love for education. So it really could be around anything that you want. And it can be as flexible as a birthday party money, or as structured as the partnership with Chicago Foundation for Women.
Thank you very much.
That's a great answer, Corliss. Thank you for that. And I will say from like she said, they can be very flexible and you don't have to be so structured and institutionalized, but you can be too if you want to. Like our LGBTQ community fund has based their grant, like they used to do more what they called venture philanthropy. So they would work a couple of years raising money and then they would do a grant cycle. But now they've seen obviously the need is huge. So they wanted to go to an annual grant making process. So what they base that off, their focus areas for like 5 years, this is our last one, and then we'll revisit again, were needs assessments that they partnered with other groups like the Morton group to go into the community and find out from community members, what do you think is important right now in the LGBTQ community? And a lot of it was, you know, safety, housing, mental health. And then they structured the committee came together and structured how they want to do their RFPs from there. So it's really, and like, I didn't know about giving circles either before I came to the trust. Like I had worked in nonprofit, but did not know about giving circles. And it always kind of thought, oh, if I'm working in nonprofit too, I probably won't ever be the kind of person who's going to have large sums of money to give away. But I'm like, if I give $100, it just didn't always feel, you know, that's a big deal to me. But is it a big deal to like an institution? But then when I thought about giving circles and affinity funds, I'm like, oh, that's so cool though. If 100 people give $100 together, it can make such a huge impact, no matter how you do it or what size. So I really try to think of that in that model too. You know, it's people coming together for, you know, whatever reason, if it's, you know, education, environmental issues, and they can really, really make a profound difference. And, you know, the grants may be smaller in size, but that's amazing for some of these smaller institutions to get to start. And like we were saying too, it gives you an opening, kind of like a stamp of approval, you know, oh, you've been funded by CFW or the Chicago Community Trust. It helps you gain funding in other areas too.
Thank you, Corliss. Thank you, Carrie, excuse me, for we both.
Thank you so much, ladies. Next, Jackie, do you still have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Alexandra. I do. I'm wondering the institutions that are housing the giving circles like CFW and the trust, you know, they're providing some sort of structure, but Do you have any sense that the people that are comprising the giving circles, their experiences, their perspectives, their lived experiences come back into the organization and are sought after and provide any sense of like expansion or, inform the direction or strategy of the organizations?
I'm happy to speak on, and Vanessa, I'll let you speak too if you'd like to, or Corliss. I know, for instance, with the Chicago Community Trust, all the affinity funds kind of started because there was a lack in funding or a lack of concentration in, Asian communities, Black communities, LGBTQ communities. And, now as the trust strategic model and goal has changed to being closing the racial and ethnic wealth gap in Black and Latina certain areas of Chicago, that I feel like the funds, African American Legacy and New Western Futuro, did kind of pave the way for that. And now, they did set goals from feedback and what the trust was seeing, and just from them having those entities. So absolutely. Our LGBTQ community fund, our disabilities fund, they really want to focus too on, like their communities being particularly marginalized. Like if it's a Black woman, disabled woman with LGBTQ, that can be like the intersection, and how can we work together with all 6 of the affinity funds to do like collaborative grant making. So yes, I would say absolutely. I've seen that personally, with the trust, how they've changed their work too.
Yeah, and I can speak to CFW, and Corliss, feel free to add on too. I would say I've seen that happen in a couple of ways. One is that a number of these organizations that end up receiving Giving Circle and Council funding, CFW's never heard of. CFW's never funded them. And because of that, they're on our radar and sometimes are later brought into CFW's portfolio down the line. So they're kind of that first pass, because if an organization has a budget of $40,000, it might not be on CFW's radar just because of how small and grassroots it is, but a community member knows about them and nominates them. Another way I'd see it is that kind of the giving circles and councils are more flexible. They're more adaptive than CFW. Like, it's easy for a group of 20 to 40 volunteers to pivot in their grant making process than it is for CFW with their X number of organizations that they've been funding year over year. So giving circles and councils have the ability to kind of test out things in their grant making to make it, really lean into the concepts of trust-based philanthropy. And how do we really operationalize that? And then can we take those pieces then and inform CFW's grant making and implement some of those pieces that make sense for us? So I think there's ways in which CFW's program team at least looks to the giving circles and councils and what they're doing to help guide some of what they're doing as they move forward too.
Yeah, and the thing that I will add is, beyond the money, and beyond, taking what a member of a giving circle has learned and bringing it back to a CCT or a CFW, there are always also ways that the members engage with community to create impact and to do more for that community on behalf of its mission and its cause. I'm looking forward to our circle getting to that place. We're relatively new, but I think Chicago Community Trust has done a lot of this, the African American legacy, in terms of being in community, bringing resources to community outside of just dollars to continue that impact. So the membership, the brain trust of the membership really does come together in a number of different ways, not only to inform the institution that it partners with, in this case, CFW CCT, but also to continue directly touching the community. And that's what makes them so powerful.
Thank you, ladies. Jackie, did that answer your question?
Yeah, super inspiring. Thank you all.
So next up, we have open communities. Question is, how do giving circles find the nonprofits they want to fund? Do they post RFPs or do their own research into nonprofits that they want to support? They imagine a mix. And what are the best ways for nonprofits to reach potential giving circle funders that might be aligned fit?
I can speak to CFWs and then Carrie, you can probably speak to the affinity funds. So again, they're all a little bit different. For our Western Suburbs Giving Circle, it's an open RFP. Anyone can apply as long as they meet the eligibility criteria of, the budget cap and geographical area, service area of the Western Suburbs. So just the different requirements, anyone can apply. For the West Side and the South Side Giving Circles, it is a member nominated process. However, organizations are able to kind of raise their hand and say they're interested in receiving funding from the group, but then a member still has to nominate them and say, yes, I want them considered part of the group. So those two groups, at least on their web pages, have kind of a Google form where someone can just say, hey, I'm interested in being considered by the group, but then a member does again have to say that they would like them considered. For LGBTQ and young women, they're solely member nominated. So again, we're leaning on members to really know their community and help us find these organizations that are grassroots and small that could really benefit from the grants that the Giving Circles and Councils are providing.
Yeah, same for a lot of the ones at the trust too, like our Young Leaders Fund. The members do most of that. We do have a form too on the website where you can go and nominate your organization, but then the members themselves do all the vetting. They work with the organizations on the application process, the organizational profile, which is like a trust part of our portal that you have to go through to get a grant at the Chicago Community Trust. But then, they are, like our Asian Giving Circle this time is doing, like, this kind of maybe it's answering the last question, but they are doing kind of experimental this time. Like they have this much money and they're like, we want to do like 8 more traditional grants, but then we're going to take 2 of those grants and do something a little different. We can be a little bit not as opposed to risk as some of the other institutions, within the trust. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question, Alexandria?
I can take this one. So the
Okay.
middle part is, do they post RFPs or do their own research into nonprofits they want to support? Now, being with YLF for 3 years, when I first got started, it was during the pandemic. So I had a couple of coaches to kind of help me through this process, then I take it on myself. So what I do is I may know someone, let's say I'm on the Children's Development and Education interest group. I may know someone who has a nonprofit that's supporting SEL or social emotional learning, or that's helping to provide food or some kind of services for children on maybe the Inglewood side or the West Side. If they align with just supporting children through programs or services, then that's how I'm able to vet if they align with the mission of, for example, YLF. There's 3 interest groups. We have community and economic development, we have arts and culture, and then we have the child development and education. So we really just kind of spearhead the process by just doing a couple of like outreaches to nonprofits that may be in the grassroots stages. We kind of like, we make sure they meet our criteria. So that looks like, are they generating under $250,000 in revenue? Do they have programs? What are their aspirations long term if they were to get a grant? Do they have their 990 forms? We take them through a criteria to make sure that they meet the qualifications before we even take them through the grant cycle. Once they pass the criteria segment of the grant cycle process, then we, Carrie and Christine, they'll send them the it's like the grant application where they'll fill that out. We then work with them on the grants, because I'm finding that a lot of nonprofit leaders, they tap out of the process because the applications are so lengthy. They don't have the background and experience to fill out those applications, much less understand what the grants process looks like. So one of the things I love that we do is we walk them through that process. We create tutorials to make it easier, because we really want to see them get funding, and we really want to support them in their initiatives so that they can go on to get more grants. And something I've found with YLF is, once you get a grant from YLF, that's a really big deal. They're then able to get grants from other nonprofit organizations or other funders that helps to catapult what they're doing from a program side, maybe hiring more staff members. So that's just one of the ways we do it on the YLF end. Um, progress. And, it's just based upon if they meet our criteria. That's kind of how we figure out if we want to align with them and fund them. And at the end of our funding cycle, we have this amazing reception where it welcomes all of the grantees. They give an overview about their nonprofit. They can, give out books that they have or flyers or panels or just share any information. And it's also like a networking too, because they're able to network with other nonprofit leaders as well to see how they can align to enhance their reach, such as whether that's helping community economic development initiatives or even child development and education. And then we have one more question, Kate. So Kate wants to know, how does a giving circle balance equitable access to funding with keeping things directed by the circle? She loves the idea that circles members would bring forth orgs to give to, but how does that impact access for organizations that aren't well known or that are just getting started in the grassroots stage? Corliss or Carrie, anyone?
I'll jump in and start on this one. It is a big question, and I think when you talk about balance of anything, it's really more of an evolution, right? And I think when you see different models of giving circles, some have open RFPs. I think that creates the most access, and others don't, right? So so there would be thinking about other ways to create access. And I think that's really just by exposure and by being in community and understanding community. I think for us, in terms of the Westside Giving Circle, we don't have an open RFP, but our members who has the voice and where their dollars are invested, they are deeply rooted in community and are always talking about the circle, right? And are branding the circle in those communities that we focus on. And I think that will evolve over time, right? The more we do it, the more access there is. And the more dollars we raise, I think that gives us an opportunity to continue evolving how we do the work. So, balance is a big thing. It's a tricky thing. And I think the more you do it, the more you learn and the more you have opportunity to adjust and evolve.
Thank you, Corliss. No, that's good. That's very true. Drew, I see your hand up, so I want to let you go first, and then Anthony, I'll get to you right after.
Oop, there- Uh, this is a please pardon me question. I know I might get some flack for this one. So this one is me representing as an agent of an organization that I work for, Association House. Um, when I hear giving circles, and I think kind of the ethos that I'm definitely getting from giving circles in terms of promoting equity is that in terms of the life cycle of an organization, the propensity of funds seem to be going to uh, grassroots organizations that are newer in their life cycle. And I ask this question of Association House. We're celebrating our 125th year. Not all of our programs are, right, not all of our programs are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. And obviously, as a larger organization, our operational budget precludes or screens us out of eligibility. So, and I navigate this one sometimes with other philanthropic entities. So I ask this particular question of giving circles. Pardon me, you didn't need all the lead up. For some of the programs that are embedded within our operational areas, if we do program-centric things, especially those that are pilot programs or are new and that are salient, that have an operational budget that falls within your parameters, albeit it is a part of an organization that is outside of your eligibility criteria, do we then still get screened out?
All right, Drew, I might have to be the one to tell you, yes, you do get screened out. Because these are, really designed for organizations that don't have the access to some of the larger organizations that will, support, uh, that just have a different funding model, right? This is just a different funding model designed to lift up those organizations that are grassroots, on the ground, just getting started, smaller, don't have the bandwidth, all of the things. That's our way of creating that equitable access. So I will be the one to say, yes, you do get screened out.
My down home answer to that is legit. I completely understand. I just had to ask it.
I hear you. I feel you. I get you.
Well, our LGBTQ fund, their RFP is open right now, and we have had that question a lot because they also do project support too, not just, as philanthropy is getting more towards general operating support. So we have had some folks be like, well, we're doing this. And we're like, we're sorry, not for this cycle. We can't. And now I will say our Nuestro Futuro this past cycle, based on, just what's going on with the immigration crisis in the country, it was recommended for us to take out the budget criteria this year. So that actually brought in, of course, a lot more applicants and then much more challenging decisions. So we decided going forward, maybe we need to put that back in. But we did attempt to, just depending on what's going on in the needs of the community at the time.
Thank you,
And
ladies.
the only thing I'd add to that is just that it's part of the calculus, and I think choosing to have lower organizational budget caps is the fact that, for example, CFW is not a very large foundation. And so how do we make a grant, or how does Giving Circle Council make a grant when they only say are working with $40,000, where CFW is working with, 2 to 3 million in grants, but we're cutting a grant to an organization that has a 15 million budget? It's kind of a calculus of like, where can our dollars have the most impact? And unfortunately, that does mean we tend to focus on smaller budgets.
Thank you, Drew, for your question.
Thank you very much for indulging me. I sincerely appreciate the responses. I know the answer, but it didn't sting anyways. I'm joking.
Oh, love, love. Last question we have is from Anthony. So Anthony wants to know, what's the best way for a nonprofit to find giving circles with matching priorities?
That is a great question. And that is something I'm always saying that, philanthropy is still working on, being a better connector, where there is a lot of like, how do we connect each other here? Try to be, as involved as you can with like different organizations. If that's even just following their LinkedIn page or their Facebook page. There's a lot of I'm a member of Chicago Women in Philanthropy, and they do like a face-to-face with funders once a year. There's another group called Breaking It Down that does a very similar thing, and it's kind of like speed networking with funders. So if you hear about those opportunities, seek those opportunities out. It gives you, a few hours, you come in and you get to meet all kinds of different funders out there. So just keeping your ears open, that is something I think philanthropy is still working on.
The only thing I would add to that is that specifically for giving circles, I know that Philanthropy Together, I think I mentioned that already, they've been building a giving circle directory. So you can go on there and kind of filter by location, filter maybe by some other things like issue areas or something. I haven't messed around with it too much, but I do know that, for example, all of our giving circles and councils are listed in that directory. So that's one way that you could try to find maybe what's in your area and see what they have available online in terms of their eligibility criteria.
What's
And
the
I'll drop a link in the chat.
So Vanessa's dropping that information in the chat. You're welcome, Anthony. So that seems it. If there's any more questions. So then I just want to thank everyone so much for attending our panel today. Um, Sorry, it's like a tornado warning in the background for some reason. Sorry. So thank you again from our panelists who are joining us, and for all the amazing work, Vanessa, Carrie, and Corliss, that you are doing on our giving circles to empower and uplift our communities. It is not going unnoticed, and it's been a pleasure serving with both of these two different organizations as a giving circle member as well. The Philanthropy Club of Illinois is sponsored by Forefront. You will find a link to Forefront's website in the chat. It's an about forefront.org to learn more about their services for Illinois-based nonprofits. Please join us for the Magic and Mysteries of Planned Giving on Tuesday, September 10th at 9 to 10:30 a.m. Details and registration will be coming soon. Our Forefront staff partner is Key Montgomery. She's a blessing, and she's currently behind the scenes, and she has been ensuring that we've had a seamless time in learning this morning. Thank you so much, Key, for all the amazing work you are doing. You are so appreciative. Appreciate it. If someone forwarded you the invite for this session, you would like to receive information regarding future Fight Club programs, please reach out to Key directly and she will add you to our Fight Club list. But that concludes our panel. Thank you so much for attending, and we really hope that we empowered, uplifted, and we do hope that you would maybe join a giving circle in the future. Thank you, guys.